to French fried trains. Since I don't have time to do a tutorial today, we're going to be doing another quick locomotive showcase here. And we're going to be looking at all of the Canadian locomotives. So Canadian National, Canadian Pacific, Via Rail, and anything else from Canada. And keep in mind that these are all already built locomotives. Every single thing you're going to see in this video here already has a tutorial up for how to build it on the channel. So if you see something you like and you want to build that, scroll back on my channel and look for the build video for it. So we'll start off here with the first Canadian National locomotive I ever did, which is this high hood GP9. And it's in the zebra stripe paint scheme here. And here's all the top detail. And as with all my train builds, there is an interior on this. So we'll come in and check that out real quick. So just a small interior in the cab here. And so that's the Canadian National GP9. Next we have some BC Rail locomotives here. And we have this wide body -8M. And since this is a wide body here, it does have a full engine compartment. So we'll really quickly check that out here, if I can get in there. So here's the prime mover and all the other stuff inside here. Then in front of this one, another BC Rail locomotive, this time a -9 WL. Still with the North American safety cab up here. And then a third BC Rail unit's in front of it, this time a -9 in the blue paint scheme here. And then right in front of it, we'll see some Grand Trunk locomotives. We have an SD40-2 and the Grand Trunk Heritage unit here. And this build is really old and outdated. It's definitely not as long as it should be. I need to redo this one. But that's what the Grand Trunk unit looks like. And in front of that we have a switcher locomotive. We have a CP Rail RS3, a fairly unique little switcher here. And right in front of that we see a Soo Line GP30. And then our next unit's back to Canadian National, this time with a Canadian National -8M wide body in the zebra paint scheme here. And directly in front of that here, we see a Soo Line Baldwin center cab locomotive. And we'll move on. Then up here, we have one of the Canadian Pacific Veterans units, an SD70 ACU. This one is the World War II Veterans unit here. And we'll go around it, see all the details real quick. And then we'll continue on. Our next Canadian locomotive will be this classic CP Rail SD40-2. And we'll check out the other side here. And we'll move on. Our next locomotive here is a Canadian National 100th Anniversary unit. And this is an ET44 AC Tier 4 GEVO. So because it's a Tier 4, you can see how big the radiators are up here on the back. Then we'll quickly move up here, and we have another ET44 AC, this time the BC Rail Heritage unit. Check out this other side real quick here. And like I said, this is another Tier 4 GEVO. Next up here we have AWVR 777, which is a fictional locomotive from the movie Unstoppable. And the reason I've included it is because the movie actually used borrowed Canadian Pacific locomotives repainted into their fictional paint scheme here. Then, as we skip forward here, we have the other AWVR fictional locomotive, also from Unstoppable and borrowed from Canadian Pacific. So that's what it looks like. And we'll move on from the fictional locomotives here. Next up, we have a Canadian National SD60 here. And finally, we're to a Canadian National locomotive that's not in the zebra paint. So that's the SD60. And then right up here, we have the Canadian National Veterans locomotive. This is a pretty cool looking one. This one honors veterans, and it's also an ET44AC Tier 4 GEVO. And we'll do a quick turnaround on this one to see the other side detail here. So that's the veterans locomotive, and we'll move on. Now this one here is kind of different and cool looking. This is a former Canadian National locomotive, sold to the Minnesota Southern Railway and repainted to this blue color scheme here. Then next up we have a standard colors Canadian Pacific AC44CW here. We'll check out the detailing on this other side here, and then we'll move on here. Here we see another Canadian Pacific Veterans unit, this time in the desert paint scheme. And this is an SD70 ACU. So that's what that one looks like here. And then we have another Canadian Pacific SD70 ACU here, this time in just the plain standard paint scheme of Canadian Pacific. And next up, we have a Canadian National SD45 T2 here. So this is a tunnel motor, and that's why we have these vents on the bottom, because the fans are actually down under here on this one. So that's our tunnel motor, and we'll move forward real quick up here. And next up, we have a Canadian Pacific SD60-3 in the standard Canadian Pacific colors here. So that's that one. And then here we have yet another Canadian Pacific Veterans unit. This one's painted up to honor the Navy, and just like the others, this is also an SD70 ACU here. Then something a little different, we have a GO Train passenger train here. On point is an MP36, and this is a full train, so it's pulling a bunch of Bombardier bi-level coach cars here. And as usual with my builds, there are full interiors inside these cars with 2 floors. So we'll take a quick look at that. That's the downstairs, and there's an upper deck up here. So that's what the inside of the bi-level coaches look like here. And then this particular one is actually a cab car here. Then we also have the new Series 10 cab car on the back. So that's what that looks like here. So that's the GO Train. Next we have this Via Rail F unit here. This particular one is an FP7, and it's barely detailed up here. So that's the F unit. Next up, we have another Canadian Pacific SD70 ACU, this time in the Canadian Pacific Heritage colors here. And then we have another locomotive in that same paint scheme here, this time a Fairbanks Morse H2466 high hood here. So that's what that one looks like, and we'll move on. And our final Canadian train here is this V-Rail LRC commuter train. And this is the full train, so it has all the passenger cars here. So that's it for our Canadian locomotive showcase. And like I said, if you see anything you like and want to build it, scroll back on my channel, because everything shown here already has a tutorial up. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And everyone, have a great week. Stay safe out there, rail fans.